Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
We're starting with our discussion of the First War of Orcs and Men. The war starts off with visible lack of control and military incompetency on the parts of Gul'Dan and Blackhand. This is very evident with how the Horde exited the Dark Portal. Initially, they had a few small skirmishes with some of the humans before rumors spread of monsters in the swamp and were dismissed by Stormwind's upper classes as being nothing but really dumb peasant stories, because the nobility honestly didn't care to an extent. They were to investigate later under Anduin Lothar, but initially Stormwind dismissed these threats as they had grown rather complacent and arrogant and vain to an extent. And I do think there's a complacency that entered into the society. Given that in the past century you've had your capital almost destroyed twice, the complacency has no place. Stormwind, the military incompetence of Gul'Dan and Blackhand is merely mentioned due to the fact that they early on banished the Frost Wolves from the Horde, and the Frost Wolves do provide a pretty strong part of the military as they have direwolf cavalry. So you've lost a chunk of your cavalry here. And while Durotan is a middling leader in terms of military matters, to banish his Frost Wolves is a really, really dumb decision militarily, especially as you are undertaking massive military conquests. It doesn't matter if you have the undead with you or if you have the Fel. You do need as many men in war as possible. Gul'Dan has a very short-sighted side. As for Blackhand, he doesn't seem very bright. To alienate Durotan at this time severely weakens the Horde. And this was retconned in later on because there was an attempt to build up Durotan as a much more important character than what he was previously in the Legendarium of Warcraft. I'm just pointing this out. Durotan would be respected not as a great war guy like Orgrim Doomhammer, and if you're alienating the strong military behind him, this doesn't make you look good, and your men are going to wonder if you're really all that smart. Yes, Durotan's not the most fierce guy. He's actually a bit of a joke in terms of warrior ethos. But we have to bear in mind the guy behind him is Orgrim Doomhammer. Durotan answers to Doomhammer, and to an extent one can regard this as an attempt to politically weaken Doomhammer to make him more dependent on Gul'Dan and Blackhand. On the other hand, under Doomhammer's commands, the Frostwolves are probably a fairly successful military force. To alienate Durotan to such an extent that he goes, you know what, no, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going off on my own, and to banish him, yeah, I get a sense that it's the two politicians trying to attack the general. It's basically the Senate versus Caesar, but time and place. You can't do that when you're about to undertake a war. But the trouble with Gul'Dan is he is very, very arrogant. As for Blackhand, that said, the only reason anyone follows him is because they are afraid of Gul'Dan. Nobody's afraid of Blackhand. He's a joke. It's Gul'Dan they fear. And with good reason. Gul'Dan is very, very powerful. That said, Blackhand would end up deciding to push north and west, far into Stormwind's territory, and probably also to give chase after Durotan, who fled north. So he's chasing two enemies here, Stormwind and the Frostwolves, and kind of Orgrim Doomhammer. This is such terrible policy making. And we have to look at the Horde as a newfound nation. This is such a bad idea. But what's worst is that the Bleeding Hollow clan is ordered into Stranglethorn Vale, where they didn't realize it, but the Gurubashi tribe are. The Gurubashi initially act as though they're going to concede lands. Then, like every guerrilla force ever imagined, they kind of decide, no, we're ambushing. And they actually use probably tactics similar to the Viet Cong against the American army and completely humiliate the orcs. And the Bleeding Hollow clan has to retreat to go fight Stormwind. This is a massive concession of defeat. The first real war and conflict that is undertaken in Azeroth is a disaster for Blackhand. This shows him to be, honestly, a political fool by banishing the Frostwolves, him and Gul'Dan, I mean. And it shows military incompetence. You never go to fight in the jungles against jungle inhabitants. It's just not a good idea. Not unless you're willing to burn down the entire forest. I'm not advocating forest fires or anything like that. Far from it. Now, unless you're willing to burn down the whole place, don't even go in, is my military advice. But Blackhand and Gul'Dan, I don't even know what they're thinking strategically here. It's as though they have no great strategic vision, but just see it as, we're going to meat grind the enemy. We're going to throw wave after wave of men. In the immortal words of Zap Brannigan, it's no wonder these two kind of lost war. And it's no wonder that the Horde, I think already, are probably losing faith in these two, because clearly they're not scouting properly. They're not considering who their allies are. Basically, we're getting some blunders on both sides. Stormwind is not taking these stories from the peasants seriously enough, while Gul'dan and Blackhand are not scouting and not compromising within their forces with their vassals well enough. The Horde is newly minted. The leaders should not be pushing their luck, but they're just trying to run before they can walk.
I'm trying to wrap my head. Okay, you alienated Dorotan and you kicked him out. That's not smart.
I think, yeah, if they are chasing him, it's probably because they don't want the Frostwolves siding with Stormwind. But my argument is, don't create the situation where that is a possibility, because only bad leaders cause revolts within their ranks. We are seeing that Gul'dan and Blackhand are not good leaders for the Horde. And this is why everyone should vote for Doomhammer, because Doomhammer for president. I mean, for leader of the Horde. Not a good start.
Largely, the orcs have the advantage of numbers and resources, so use them. Use your advantages. Don't play to the tune of the enemy,
because they've already seized quite a bit of land.
So I repeat,
use your advantages. But they're fighting on the terms of the Gurubashi, and this is why the Gurubashi gained an early advantage and pushed them out, because the orcs were fighting on their terms, not on their own terms.
the Bleeding Hollow clan was given direct orders by Blackhand to invade Stranglethorn. Therefore, he should get a lot of the blame
for this poor decision.
But as he's just a puppet,
isn't a real warrior or general, the real blame goes to Gul'Dan,
who has eyes bigger than his stomach.
Yeah. Now, it won't just be mistake after mistake on the part of the leaders of the Horde. There will start to be some decent political and military decisions on their parts. It's just the early start of this war, both sides face planted in front of each other, which I will actually argue that's fairly realistic to an extent. One of my old history professors used to say, sometimes
it's not about who makes the most brilliant decisions in battle, but who screws up the worst or the most.
Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you're Doomhammer taking down Blackhand.